Everybody, welcome to the latest episode of Theater Tuesday, and this is our 35th episode, which makes me really excited. And this is our big end of the year episode, very exciting, where we get to share the best of theater that we saw, particularly in Utah, but other places too. It's going to be super fun. I am theater critic Rachel Wagner, and Maren's here.
Hello.
And Scott is here.
Woohoo! Hey.
Yes, thank you both so much for coming on. And overall, would you say that this has been a pretty good year in general for the Utah theater scene and just your own theater going experiences? Would you say, Maren?
Yes, in fact, when I was looking through everything, trying to decide on some of the stuff, what my general takeaway was, I'm actually disappointed in how much I missed. Because I saw as much as I could, but just with other things happening in my life, the death of my mom, that sort of things, there was a lot that I missed. And so I sat and I thought, I've got to make an effort to see more next year, because I was like looking at our blog and seeing all the different reviews, and I thought, oh, I missed that. I really wish I had seen this. I really wish I had seen that. And we have so much great theater here in Utah that it was a fantastic year. And what a sad problem to have that we there was too much that we couldn't see just right here in Utah.
Well, and nobody can see everything. I mean, that's part of the reason why I wanted to start this Theater Tuesday, is because I want to hear what other people are seeing and what else is out there, because it's impossible. You can't see everything. What about you, Scott? What do you think overall?
Yeah, I felt the same way, especially with straight plays this year. I think that, and I think you and I have had this conversation, but sometimes I feel like in Utah, we prioritize singing and dancing above acting. But some of the straight plays I saw this year were just phenomenal. And I love that happened, right? And I love that even some of the things that I wasn't really impressed by, the production of it, I love some of the risks and some of the choices that companies are taking with really creative theater, especially while theaters across the country are struggling. And I don't feel like that's happening as much in Utah because of the good things that are being done.
And I admit that I am partial to particular shows, like anybody is. And so when I was making my list, it was hard for me to not want to just put sort of my favorites on, but I tried to have some variety. But it's true that if a company does Bright Star, if they do Daddy Longlegs, they're probably going to get on my best list. Or She Loves Me. You'll hear from all three of those on this list. Those are some of my favorites. But I thought we'd get the more negative out of the way first. And then we'll be positive for the whole rest of the episode. We talk a little bit about the worst of the year that we saw. And for me, this is just personal taste. The worst thing that I saw all year was Sleepy Hollow at West Valley Performing Arts Center. I really disliked everything about this. I really disliked the music. I really disliked the staging of it. I really disliked just how it was like it was trying to be a drama and be all serious about these missing children. But then it would get religious at times. And I haven't read the original story since high school. So, I know sort of the Disney adaptation probably the best, because, I'm a Disney person. In the Disney adaptation, like he's very superstitious, Ichabod, and there wasn't really any of that. I don't know. I found it really boring. I disliked all of the songs. It just was not for me. I did not like it. So yeah, and I feel bad saying that because it's local written, but just
not for every show is not for everyone. I'm sad that I didn't see it, because I like West Valley so much, and I love The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, so it might have been for me.
Yeah, but our write-up gave it a good write-up, so to each their own. It was not for me. And
I think there's value in being able to look at it and go, okay, this might still be a work in progress, this adaptation, right? Especially because I think this is the first place that it was mounted.
Yeah, and that's one of the main things to look at with stuff like that too, is to know that this is the brand new show, and how much do brand new shows change.
Yeah, it was done, I think, at Centerpoint, but yeah, so it is really new. They're still basically workshopping it, which is, you know, what you're gonna have. But it felt like a weak attempt to be Into the Woods, which I don't even like Into the Woods. So, but
see, that's different than all of you. It's one of my favorites, Into the Woods. But yeah, again, to each their own. We all have to have different shows. So.
That's right. So Maren, which one that wasn't your favorite?
So, and it's funny when you sent that message, because I was like looking through things trying to figure out, because I'm really someone who usually likes most things. They're very little on my list, and I picked a New York show as my least favorite, which it's so funny to think that a Broadway show was my least favorite, but overall, I Need That with Danny DeVito, and Danny was great, and the actors were all great. They were fine, and the production value was fine, but it just was. It's not a great show, and I do think I've analyzed it here and there and everywhere, and I do think that this is where my two careers converging became a problem, because it does have this underlying story of hoarding disorder, and they resolved it way too quickly, and like I'm sitting there at the curtain call thinking they're going to be hoarding again in a week. They're going to be hoarding again in a week. Like you did not solve a darn thing. And so I just really struggled with the fact that it was not written well enough, and maybe it was based on someone's personal experience. I have no idea. I don't know enough about the writer, but as a therapist, I just thought you didn't resolve this problem well enough. You don't understand this problem well enough, and I have treated people with hoarding disorder, and it just I really struggled with that show.
Yeah. I could, that makes total sense. And like, I think like personally, the big advantage with the Broadway productions is almost more, they get it's the most current, and obviously they have the biggest budgets. But I've seen as far as the quality of the singing and the quality of the other aspects, I've seen just as good out here. I mean, especially if you're considering Pioneer Theater and stuff like that. But
but I think that that's part of why too I expected a little more research into it, and where I just feel like, I mean, as a therapist, like I know that they hire people to consult on shows and things like that, where I just felt like, oh my goodness, this is not, because just in contrast, because I'm not going to talk about it in any of my favorites or whatever, but in contrast, the night before I had seen Jaja's African Hair Braiding, and my dissertation was on refugee women and immigrants, and so I know quite a bit about that world too, and the things they got right in that show were 100%. And so knowing that show had gotten everything right, and then seeing how much they hadn't gotten right on I Need That, just felt like
I just think that sometimes we as Utah critics can put like Broadway up on this like, oh, you know, on this pedestal, when like, I don't know if it always deserves it.
Yeah, no. And I had written, and this will come up in my favorite, but I had written about a show that I saw a week later after I got back from New York that I enjoyed more than I Need That. And it was right here in Utah.
Yeah.
So.
What about you, Scott? What's your least favorite that you saw?
Okay, so I'm a big sports guy, if you can't tell from my Raiders hat and my Sacramento Kings jacket and all those things. But there's a movie called Moneyball, and I promise I'm going somewhere with this. That's about the Oakland A's baseball team.
Yeah.
And he says, there's the rich teams, and then there's the poor teams, and then there's 50 feet of crap, and then there's the Oakland A's, because they just spend nothing, right? And baseball, the salary cap, and there's all that inequity with it. And this year there were the good plays and the bad plays, and then there was 50 feet of crap, and then there was, bless their hearts, Hans Christian Andersen at Hale and Sandy. It was so bad. And I'm just going to kind of rattle off some things that stuck with me. So the first thing is that this is an adaptation, and you see, they're promoting it as Hans Christian Andersen in New York, but it has nothing to do with the original Hans Christian Andersen character or his stories or whatever. And so that initially was like, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then they take, and there's a film version of it, and they're like, this is an adaptation of the film. And my initial response to the play was so bad that night my wife and I went home and watched the film version, and were even more disappointed because of the possibilities of this show. So again, it's an adaptation. It needs to be workshopped. They had a Tony Award winning, or they pulled from Tony Award winning music and have someone who was composing it that was good. But it was really, really bad. And the story was bad. And they had like the ghost of Hans Christian Andersen who would pop out like the Phantom of the Opera from bookcases and things, wearing this very loud Willy Wonka coat. And anytime you have like this guy named Hans Christian Andersen who has nothing to do with the main, the author. And he's like, I'm inspired by this person, but my life is going hard. I inherited a bookshop that I don't want, and I'm running a dance studio that's ineffective, and I'm a failed actor in New York. And he just, everything that he does, all of the choices that he makes as a character are very off-putting. And there were moments that could have been salvageable, but the actor that I saw play the part was also not good. And so you had all of these, like, anytime something would go wrong, Hans Christian Andersen, the Willy Wonka ghost, would pop out and sing, I'm Hans Christian Andersen. And he's like, oh, that solves all my problems. And so my wife and I, for the last 8 months, have constantly Hans Christian Andersen. And we just like, it was rough. And the thing that also, and this was an ad lib, what I learned later is that it wasn't in the script, but there was this moment where it's very melodramatic. The bookshop is going to close. They need to have someone pay the rent and manage to save the store at the very end. But there's a rent collector who comes and he's like, well, I'm going to shut down your store. And they go, you can't, it's Christmas. And he goes, I must. And also happy Hanukkah, and slams the door. And I was just like, whoa, that's a really, really bad anti-Semitic stereotype. And apparently it was an ad lib from the actor, but that's not something an actor says. Unless it was in the rehearsal process at some point too, and it just was let to slide. And I just saw that and just went, no, I'm sorry. Like, I was going to trash this play initially when I just was so disappointed in it. Like, the set was beautiful, and that's the last good thing I can say about it. But everything else was really, really rough. And then you have this moment where I'm like, how did you get to this point in the production where an actor can walk on stage and ad-lib a quip like that and no one says anything? Right?
That's not okay.
No, it's not. And this is the same year where we had people burning Nazi Nazi flags outside of a parade in New York. And it's just like, do you really not hear yourself right now?
That's weird.
I cannot tell you how much I detested that performance. I mean, my jaw was just in my lap.
Well, and they had like a character whose whole job was just to deliver magazines. I was like, why is this character in the show? And I like, he would come up and he'd be like, here are catalogs. He'd be like, this is the mail. Here's the mail. And I'm like, we gave nothing for this character to do. Literally, their job was to come. And I guess there were there were some parts with the kids I thought were kind of cute, with the dancing, with the kids dancing and stuff. But
they even had a dance teacher. It was such a mess. The ultimate dance teacher, right?
Yeah.
And she was like talking about how much she hates children. And I was just like, this is a theater that runs theater camps for children.
Yeah.
I don't want this to be the portrayal of theater for youth. Like, this is my job.
It was weird because it was like they were trying to workshop a show, but you can't really, like, I think that if Hale wants to do something like that, they really need to have a black box or something that's going to be a lot cheaper. I don't think you can black box. I don't think you can workshop a show when you're charging $60, $70 a ticket.
Yeah,
totally.
That's the problem.
Agreed.
And so yeah, it was a mess.
I'm glad I missed it. I'm glad I missed it.
They wanted to do that, but it failed so hard in so many ways.
Yeah. Well, the other one that I will mention that I famously left in intermission for Puffs. I did not like that at all. But the other one that I will mention is was another local work that I saw in Provo called The Principal Wife, and it was so strange. I just like there was some talent there. There was some talent. And I guess they were trying to do like a Mormon version of kind of a Mormon Fiddler on the Roof, but I felt like I'm watching a polygamy propaganda play is how it felt
So
like.
it was pro polygamy.
Like very pro polygamy in this,
wow.
and very like in the way it did the melodrama, it felt like a propaganda play. And I was just, and it was long. It was over 3 hours, and I was just like, oh man, this is rough.
Wow.
So
Okay.
they have a that one was tough, but yeah, so that's the worst of the
Wow.
year.
Are you a fan of Rachel's Reviews? Do you look forward to Family Movie Night, Female Film Critics panels, or the Talking Disney podcast? If so, please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a Patreon. As a patron, you get to access monthly events such as the watch-alongs and Q&As, where you get to talk to stars and find out the behind the scenes of the movie making industry. And you can pick what I review for Family Movie Night or even become a guest on the podcast. Podcasts and YouTube channels are expensive, and I really, really could use your help. I would so appreciate it. You also get to be a member of the Facebook group where we talk about all the films that we're seeing, and we have so much fun. Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies and select one of the Rachel's fan tiers. That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
Well, let's talk about our favorites. And you know, the bad theater is the price you have to pay for all the good stuff.
Absolutely.
So we're going to start talking about our favorite equity productions that we saw. And so I did one New York trip this year, and it might make me unsophisticated to say, but my favorite thing I saw on that trip, even though I admit that it's somewhat an amusement park attraction, I understand why people are critical of it, was Back to the Future, the musical. And it is,
I wanted to see it because I hear that the tech is amazing.
yeah, the spectacle of it was so much fun. And I do love the movie. It's it's in my last ranking I did of my top 50 favorite movies. It was high. So I love the movie. And so that probably helps. And it is very, it is very samey to the movie. Like, it is not one that took like any creative license at all. Even down to the costumes. They look exactly like the movie. So it's only for fans of the movie, but I am one. And I think it was probably also helped by the fact that it was the only show I went to with my friend. I was by myself for all the rest of them. So that did add something to the experience, but it was just so much fun and I had such a great time. And the guy who was playing Marty is super charming and great. I was less convinced by the doc. Since everything was so samey, he was the one thing that I was like, this isn't the same. And so, you know, that there was that, but I really enjoyed it. I had a great time, and I the spectacle of it, the time travel, the way they did the lighting, the way they did all of that, the time travel was really fun. I had a great time. So that was my favorite. What about you, Maren?
I went to New York twice this year. But then also like looking at all of it, the equity here in Utah as well. Honestly, in New York, I mean, I saw some really profound stuff, some things that I really loved. I got to see Audra's one woman show in New York, and that was just Audra McDonald's. It was phenomenal. I really, like I had mentioned before, love Jaja's African hair braiding. I loved Here Lies Love, and I know some critics didn't, but my children are half Filipino, so I'm the audience. And I reviewed that. I just really loved it, and I feel like it has a life outside of Broadway. I really loved Anne Juliet. I really loved it. And I know that like when you talk about that's an amusement park show, I mean, it absolutely is. It's Max Martin's music and Shakespeare light, but it is a party. It is a party. You are partying. It is so much fun. But honestly, like if I'm gonna pick my favorite equity of the year, it was Pioneer's Murder on the Orient Express. Oh my goodness.
I wish I'd seen it.
Oh my goodness, the set design, it just, and I love Agatha Christie. Like my grandmother had every Agatha Christie paperback book, and my grandmother was just a very intelligent woman, and she had this little office in her house, and you'd go and you could grab an Agatha Christie book and read them. And I just read the books from the time I was young, way too young to be reading Agatha Christie, but then I was reading Agatha Christie, like, but whatever. And so it just, oh, I love Pioneer. I love Pioneer. It's one of the only theaters that I buy tickets to. My husband and I have season tickets right at the front of the lodge because I just love those seats. I love everything about it. And I cannot even tell you how much I enjoyed that show. So, like, even though I went to New York twice, saw so many great things, I really, Murder on the Orient Express.
I wish I had gone to see that. I was feeling kind of mystery Agatha Christie'd out because I haven't been that big a fan of the Branagh movies, and I don't know. And then it's not Agatha Christie, but I saw Dial M for Murder, and I didn't like that, and so I was just like, I don't know, maybe just mysteries just aren't my thing. But I've heard it was great.
So good.
Yeah. What about you, Scott?
First of all, I'm super glad you talked about Murder on the Orient Express because I'm so spot on. I mean, first of all, my not so secret about being a theater critic is I've never been to New York, so I've never seen anything on Broadway. But I saw that at Pioneer and just went, wow, this was so good. And not only was it such beautiful set, but I loved how quickly the entire cast could switch from, lighthearted, silly, jokey to immediately everything is, serious as the grave. And then bounce back and just they did it so gracefully. Like it was they had such good vision for the show on all aspects. I also was profoundly moved by the Tina Turner musical. I saw the national tour of that and wrote the review of it. The first performance after she had died.
Oh, right. Oh my gosh. So good. I saw it a couple days later.
The context of that was just, I mean, what are you supposed to do as a performer in that show where you're like, wow, we're telling the story and now this gravity has been added to it. And it was profound. I mean, there's the song at the very end of Act 1 where she is basically pleading with the audience as if they're the night manager at this hotel, being like, I can't pay you, but please, I promise I will. I always do these things. And I just, oh man, I ugly cried at that moment. But I think my favorite was and it was not in Utah, but it was the national tour of Hadestown that I saw at the Morrison Center in Boise. First of all, the Morrison Center is gorgeous. I mean, it is a stunning, stunning fine arts performance venue. And with the exception of the lead playing Orpheus in Act 1, everything about it was phenomenal all the way through. And then in Act 2, the lead playing Orpheus did a much better job. But wow, I mean, it was so good. And all of the characters held up with their Broadway counterparts, at least that I've heard from the recording, because I haven't seen it in New York, but they did such a lovely job matching that energy while bringing new things to the characters. And those three, those are just the shows that I saw this year where I went, wow, this is profoundly good.
I really want to see Hadestown again because I did enjoy it. I liked it. I saw it on Broadway, but I was really tired the day that I saw it, and I was struggling. Not because it was boring. I just was tired. And one of these days I need to see it again, give it a better shake.
I saw it the week before the pandemic shut. I was in New York March 8th through something, right before the pandemic, the week before. And then, so it was literally like one of the very last things I saw. And then I saw it again right after the pandemic, right after it reopened. It is literally, in my mind, the best thing I've seen in decades. Decades. Like, honestly, and I know this makes me basic white girl, like what I'm about to say right here, but I moved to New York in 2003, December of 2003. And I don't know how much people understand what that means for Broadway history, but I moved 2 months after Wicked opened. And so that was one of the first things I saw on Broadway when I moved there. And I was just, blown away by Wicked. And so Wicked had become my standard, my basic white girl Broadway standard.
Mhm.
And then there's something else that is my real Broadway standard that we're going to talk about in a minute because of what one of my favorite of the year is. But that I didn't think anything would ever top my experience of seeing Wicked until I saw Hadestown the week before the pandemic shut down. And especially when I'm not Orpheus, sorry, when Wait for Me,
Yeah.
when they're
Oh, yeah.
singing Wait for Me,
Oh, yeah.
and the whole set opens up, and the lighting design and the music and the choreography and everything just comes together in a way that I've never seen any kind of production value like that ever.
The spectacle is very impressive. Even though I was tired, I still was very impressed by the spectacle.
And
I'm just saying I want to see it again.
Yeah.
You know,
and I've seen it on Broadway.
Come back to Newtown. Come to Utah
Yeah,
every
come
year.
to Utah again, please, because I've seen it on
Yes.
Broadway and I've seen it in the touring company. And then also like the trombone player, because I am a wind player. My husband is a brass player and we have instrumentalists, my whole family. And like the trombone player being able to play like that and dance.
Yep.
Like if you go back and read, because I reviewed it for UTBA when it came to Salt Lake. And I have like a whole paragraph about the woman who was the trombone player here, because that is skill like no other. I can't even imagine, as an instrumentalist, I cannot imagine the wind power that it takes, because it's hard enough to sing and dance, but to play an instrument is so much more than singing and dancing. Like that anyway.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the semi-professional productions, our favorite. So the one that I ended up going with, I saw lots of really good ones, is actually, and I don't know where the line is between semi-professional and amateur and whatever.
Problem is I don't know
but I went with, and because they list on their website that they are Ogden's Professional Theater, so whatever. I'm going with Kinky Boots at the Ziegfeld. It was a very meaningful experience after they'd gotten bullied and persecuted, for lack of a better word, because they were doing Kinky Boots and they dared to have a student night, which is ridiculous. And so I think the whole production had like a special enthusiasm about it and conviction to it. And Sydney Vance playing, I forget, is it Lauren, the lead, the female character, I can't think of her name, but anyway, she was amazing. They were amazing, and the talent was really good, the production was really good, and I'd never seen it before, and just the whole experience was very inspiring, all involved.
That's one of the ones that I really kicked myself for missing, because of everything that happened. But my mom went into the hospital right around that time. And
what about you, Maren?
Again, I don't know if they count as semi-professional. I honestly don't know, but this is where I put it. But and honestly, overall, probably my favorite experience with theater this year in Utah was American West's Ragtime.
That was really good. I forgot about that, but yeah, absolutely.
That
was amazing.
Lord, and this is again where I say like my theater standard. I went on 2 trips to New York. My first 2 trips to New York were in 1997 and 1998 after I graduated from high school in 1997, and I got to see the original cast of Ragtime. And just like I didn't even know, I'd always loved theater, but I didn't know theater could be that until I saw Ragtime. I didn't know.
Yeah. And that was outstanding. I'm glad you picked that. Yeah. And that was very good.
And I've seen other productions of Ragtime since. I mean, I saw Utah Shakespeare Festival's version of Ragtime, which was great. it is literally probably one of my very favorite shows, and I think one of the best written shows out there. But nothing had lived up to the original Broadway cast. I mean, how could it? Yeah. But American West, the way they directed it, the way that they costumed it, the way that they did with so little, like I just sat there and I just thought, I cannot believe I'm seeing this. And they had a full orchestra. I brought my daughter with me, and she was just so impressed. And she's 13, so she's right at that age where she's starting to understand the history behind all of it, and just, oh, beautiful. So
Yeah.
well done.
Welcome to the Pilot Podcast. My name is BJ.
And my name is Me Too, and we promise this promo is worth it, so please don't skip ahead.
We're two judgy friends who put our judgmental skills to work for you. We review the pilot episodes of new and popular shows and shows that our listeners request to answer your question, should I watch this?
Look, a lot of us are spending a lot more time at home, and yes, we should be reading and trying new projects and enriching ourselves, but does anything beat binging a great show?
Let us take the guesswork out of deciding what your next show will be. Tune in to The Pilot Podcast at thepilotpodcast.com.
What would you say, Scott?
I was really, really in love with the and we talked about this, but with the Parker Theater Christmas Carol. Because Christmas Carol's done a lot in Utah. And probably everywhere, but a lot here. And it was a technical masterpiece. The script writing, which they write their own scripts, I believe. I know they do for most things, and I think they did for this as well, was really, really good. Again, I hope that other theaters reach out and try and take some of their really good scripts like Pumpkin Giant and things like that. But it was scary. I mean, it was one where, not like horrifying, but it is very clear that they're not pulling punches on, hey, let's talk about the fact that, the wealthy oppressing the poor is a big problem, and there is divine justice, right? Like that is the Christmas Carol story, and they were not pulling punches on.
Yeah.
You should feel bad about, doing the kinds of things that oppress people, and that Scrooge is needing to change, right? There are a lot of versions that make him kind of a silly, oh, it's a bit of mustard or a bit of beef.
Mm-hmm. Like wink, wink.
Right.
Yeah.
But this was it was so good. It was the kind of show that you could watch any time of the year and be like, wow, this was great.
I agree. It's the best that show can be done. I really think it's the best that story can be told. It's so good. All right. So next we have the best college university production. So I think I have to go with Godspell at BYU. It was very creative how they did it. It was, a show I had never seen before, so that was exciting. And I don't have anything to compare it to, but I'm told the way that they staged it and even the placement of some of the songs was different than other versions. And all very talented students. So I think I gotta go with that. What about you, Maren?
I am so sad that I missed Godspell, because it's, again, one hardly ever done here, so one I've never seen. And yeah, but I was floored by Snow College's Crucible. Floored. And we've never reviewed something at Snow College, and I went to Snow College, so I went ahead. But when I went there, we had the old Crane Theater, which doesn't exist anymore. They have a new Eccles Performing Arts center down there. But wow, like who knew how much Snow College has improved as a performing arts center. And they were very gracious hosts. They took me and my daughter, who is still trying to decide where she wants to go to school, and showed us around the whole performing arts center. And I think they may have sold her, took us into the costume shop, because my daughter's into costuming. But this director, the best thing that because I really like to look at what's going on besides just the leads in a show. And the director had taken a lot of his students and given them silent roles, and almost like spirits. They were dressed in black and whatever else. And I was very interested in it. And so I talked to him in intermission about how, because they just seemed so into their role. And so I asked him about it at intermission, and he told me each of them, he had been given the name of a person who died in Salem, and they were to research that person and understand that. And so they were the spirits of the people who had died in Salem. And I was like, because we all know that the Crucible is, an allegory for McCarthyism and whatever else. And so understood. but he decided to take a different route and a different road, and it was so beautiful and so interesting and so innovative. And then, knowing what it's like to be in a college theater department and knowing that you've got all these students who need performance experience and whatever. And so to give them that opportunity to have that much character development and that much, beautiful.
And what about you, Scott?
I'm with you on wishing I'd seen Godspell, and now I'm wishing I'd seen Crucible.
Me too.
There are two that I really love, and I'll just briefly talk about them. One is I saw Anne Frank at Utah Valley University, and I took my students to see it. And it was incredible how engaged we all were from start to finish. And they had a big unit set, which, is the hiding place that they're in. But you could see all of the actors all the time. And they always had stage business. They were always engaged. There were things that they were doing that never felt like, I'm just going to go lay down for these next two scenes because I need to pretend that I'm asleep. They were up and they were moving, but not in a way that was distracting. They did such a good job of knowing how to get the audience to notice things. And I was so blown away by that. And the other one was in February, and I guess I'm just on a big Orpheus and Eurydice kick, or at least was this year, was Eurydice at Salt Lake Community College. They did the Sarah Rule version, and there are some really important symbols in it. But one of the things that I loved that they did is they had a voiced Eurydice and they had a deaf actress playing Eurydice as well.
Oh,
and
that's cool.
she was the primary. So she would sign everything that she said, and a voiced Eurydice in a similar costume would say the lines so that the hearing audience could understand what was being said. And it was so impressive to watch them work together because they weren't just doing the same blocking. It was like watching two halves of a whole. And all of the characters had both a voiced and a signing part to them. There were I think 3 ensemble members or maybe 2 ensemble members who would sign for different characters at different times. And it was so profound. And it's such a good script. It puts the power back in Eurydice's hand to make the choice getting Orpheus to turn around. And she's, if you read about her writing about it, she's talking about her love for her father and the complicated feelings that she has there. But it was such a beautiful script and so beautifully done and so simple. And the bonus point for me, because again, I'm a theater educator, middle school, and I take my kids to go see shows. My 8-year-old walked out of it and was talking about it and still talks about it. And he understood the Eurydice story so well, but it also just profoundly hit him. It was accessible for anyone. And I just, wow, it was so good.
No.
Ziegfeld does a show like that with deaf actors once a year because they have an assistant director who's a CODA, a child of deaf adults. And I know that next year it's going to be Secret Garden.
It's going to be so good.
Cool.
It's going to be so good.
So excited.
All right. So next we have excellent amateur productions. And I got to go with Jekyll and Hyde at Draper Historic Theater. It was the first time I'd actually seen Jekyll and Hyde. I had the wrong impression about Draper. I thought that they did mostly like cheap parodies, and I was just like, oh, I don't like that theater. But I'd heard about this one, and so I went and saw it, and I was blown away. I could not believe the quality of especially the 3 leads, how good they were. And Tanner Tate, he's been here on Theater Tuesday. He was great as Jekyll Hyde, especially how he did the transformations, the physicality of his performance. I was so impressed with the quality. He teaches voice lessons for his career, and you see why. Like, he has such a beautiful timbre to his voice, and he was just so good at that show has some problems as far as the book and stuff, but he was great, and it was a billion times better than I thought it was going to be. Just the staging, the 3 leads, just everything. I was so impressed. I could not believe that something in this dinky little theater in Draper was so good. So that would be my pick for the best that I saw. What about you, Maren?
So years ago, Draper did one of my very favorite productions of Macbeth. It's like
Cool.
they really just can blow it out of the park sometimes. But So I have two, both from the same place though. And you're gonna hate me, Rachel, but I loved Hope Box's Into the Woods. Like so
That's good.
much. Like tears in my eyes. And I really think that Into the Woods is one that if you get the right director who has the right vision, it can be phenomenal. And I love Into the Woods, so I know you guys don't, but I do. I think it's beautiful.
Do you not like it, Scott?
I'm not a huge fan now.
Okay.
But I think it's very beautiful, but I also think that it's especially like poignant when you have the right director. And again, like I hate to harp on it, but
well, I mean, I saw it at Kensington this year, and they did an incredible job, and they would, and so I can recognize when it's done well.
yeah. And certain times of your life, different shows mean different things. And yeah, I feel like I'm talking about it too much, but the holidays too have been really hard, and my mom passed away, and
Yeah.
the sometimes people leave you halfway through the wood, and just stuff like that. And when the director hits that note right and gets that moment right, it's just,
yeah,
there are reasons why Sondheim writes the way he does and gets things right. But the other production that Hope Box did that I just found to be such a great time, and I really wish more theaters would do this, was 25th annual Putnam County Spelly Bee. I love that show. And there are two versions, a little bit cleaner one and a little bit more racy one. And of course, Hope Box did the cleaner one. And the thing is for Utah theaters, I really wish that they knew that there was the cleaner one. I think that a lot of companies shy away from it because they're afraid of some of the subject matter because they've only heard the cast album. And it's a lovely show. It's so much fun. It's adorable, and they did a great job of it.
What about you, Scott?
I liked the Utah Valley Players version of Next to Normal. Again, a show that you don't get to see in Utah a lot.
Where's Utah Valley Players? Good. Where's that?
So it's run by Zach Elsey. So he's kind of an incredible story. Like, he's someone that you might want to get on the podcast or Theater Tuesdays, because he, as a teenager, wanted to start doing plays during the summer to keep kids engaged with theater things and give them a good mental health outlet. Phenomenal. And I think he's 21, and he's been doing this for 6 years, producing plays. And so it was Next to Normal was part of the Creekside Theater Festival, done at Leahona Academy. And it was so good. Sean DeMoss directed it, and I'm a huge Sean DeMoss fan. She was one of my BYU professors, and she's just done incredible work. But she took the story, and again, everyone was engaged all the time. The way that she made choices and worked with her actors to keep the son involved as an unspoken role was so beautiful. And it's just, again, a show you don't get to see in Utah as often. And I actually think that it would be fun, Maren, at some point to have a conversation with you about all of the plays that deal with the things that you deal with as a therapist, and which of them are done well and which aren't, because I know that Next to Normal can be kind of divisive in that way.
And Next to Normal in particular, I sing the pharmacology song all the time, like because whenever someone tells me what they're taking, I'm like, but yeah.
Oh yes, and one more thing.
yeah. No, but
we should do an episode of Theater Tuesday on that.
Yeah,
shrink episode.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, but you're absolutely right. It can be done terribly, but it can also be. There are so many people who can be healed by that show, and oh yeah. Anyway,
yeah.
I'm with you. And the other one that I liked a lot was Singing in the Rain at Draper Arts Council. I thought that it was overall a pretty cute show. The one that I had to
was
pick,
that the outdoor one? Outdoor amphitheater.
And it was fun because it actually rained a little bit that night, so we're watching it in the rain. And the summer rain, it was nice. And but they have the moment where they're supposed to be doing the yes, 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 no, 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 and they get it wrong in the story, but they got getting it wrong, and so it lined up the right way, no. And the jokes didn't land, but everything else about it was really fun. And the Lena was phenomenal, and the Cosmo was phenomenal. I mean, those two alone were worth going back and seeing it. Like, it was. So
that was a good production. I think they are underrated there. That Draper Amphitheater, they're almost always great. They had a Hairspray, not this year, but year before, that was so good. All right. So excellent productions of musicals. I have to go with Bright Star at Hope Box. It was absolutely outstanding. They had musicians there playing along. All the performances were excellent. The setting, the sets, everything. I mean, it's just I absolutely love the show, of course. But I just thought they did an incredible job with it, and it's such a perfect show for their mission and what they do there. So that would be it. And then I absolutely loved Fiddler on the Roof at the Regalo in Lehigh, and that's another very underappreciated company. And I'll be talking about that again, but that was absolutely outstanding. The choreography, the costumes, the performances, just unbelievable. So that's what I would have. What about you, Maren?
I feel like I'm going to start repeating myself for a little bit here,
Sure.
but I'd go back to Ragtime.
Yeah.
But then I would add to the list Center Point's Something Rotten.
Yeah, that was really good too.
It was very good and so much fun. I love that. I love that show. So.
Yeah. What about you, Scott?
This is where I want to reemphasize Tina Turner. I think the jukebox musical can hit or miss, but this one, and again, maybe it was just the context, but it was so powerful, and it felt like the narrative that they were weaving about this, this bio musical of her life was so insightful, and you just see the abuse that this woman has suffered, and it's a good reminder, because I think we all need reminders that people who sometimes appear good on the outside, or like they're, that they have everything going for them, sometimes don't. And it was so beautifully done, and the energy was incredible. I mean, I know I'm kind of cheating there by taking a national tour during, a peak moment of, I mean, an iconic moment of any time that this could have ever been performed, but it was great. My wife went back the next night.
Oh, wow.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hearty, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies.
So next is productions of Shakespeare. I actually have two real quick. Midsummer's Night Dream at Shakespeare Festival. It was an amazing memory because it was, torrential downpour. It was raining really hard, and the actors just plowed through, and it was very memorable. And then also Macbeth at the Twilly Theater. It was so cool. It was literally like on the side of the mountain. There was we were sitting on rocks. And I just think it was unbelievable. And they did such an incredible job, and we were looking down on them, and it was a very, very memorable theatrical experience. So, well, what about you, Maren?
So I could not believe this, and so I looked back a bunch of times, but it looks like I only saw one Shakespeare this year.
Oh yeah.
And they did a fantastic job, but I despise Romeo and Juliet, so I can't even say it was the best, because Parker did fine, but my gosh, it's the worst Shakespeare show. It's the worst Shakespeare show. So I don't have something to add to this category.
Fair enough. All right, Scott, what about you?
I saw 3 Romeo and Juliets this year, actually. And I like Romeo and Juliet, but I didn't like Parker. The best Shakespeare I saw this year was Coriolanus at the Utah Shakespeare Festival. It was phenomenal. It was well acted. It was beautiful dramaturgy research. It was well designed, and it was like Rambo meets Shakespeare. And it's, again, not one you get to see very often, and absolutely one of the best plays that I'd seen in a long time.
So next is excellent directing and choreography. I have to go with Around the World in 80 Days at Hale Theater. This I reviewed for UTBA, and they did just an incredible job. And it was a really fun experience for me as a critic, because I talked to the choreographer and had to learn a lot of these circus terms, the different acts and stuff, because I don't know anything about that. And so it was fun to kind of learn and the different apparatus and the different. But yeah, I mean, they did I was worried that it was going to feel like caricatures in the different lands, that they visit, but everything, I'm no expert again, but everything felt really authentic to me and really detailed. And so you really got to visit and see dance from all these different places through the course of the show, and see all this like circus acts and tightrope and stuff. Like, it was cool. And so that was a very impressive production from Hale. What about you, Maren?
Back to Ragtime. Jed Broberg.
Really good.
I actually was a contemporary of his at Utah State. He probably would never remember me. He was majoring in theater. I was minoring in theater at the same time. But just he's a high school theater teacher now. And then I would add to that the Crucible down at Snow College. This is a new professor.
Oh, yeah.
The professor there, he's a new professor. This is his first year at Snow, who directed it, and it just
Yeah.
can't wait to see more that he does down at that at that college, because so fantastic.
What about you, Scott?
White Christmas at Tuacahn had some phenomenal choreography. Was really impressed by that. And also the Christmas Carol musical at Hope Box had some really beautiful choreography as well. And I think the directing kind of shines through the other things that I talked about, but in terms of choreography specifically, those two were ones where I just went, wow. It wasn't just well executed, but the formations and how they came together were really nicely done.
Good. Okay. Next is the best acting performances. And I had to go with Emily Voorhees and Danny Keach in Daddy Longlegs at OPA. It's such a hard role. There's only the two of them the entire time. They have to have good chemistry. They have to, and I love the show. They were great. I really enjoyed it. It was in their black box there at OPA. And yeah, really good, especially her. She was excellent. So that, and then I love Tanner Tate in Jekyll and Hyde, and then Mackenzie Tolk-Holman, who's been on this show in Addams Family at Tim Theater. That whole production was great, and she was the perfect Morticia, really good. So what about you, Maren?
So Annie Farron, who does a lot of stuff up north here, she was B in Something Rotten at Centerpoint. And she just, she commands a stage every time she goes on it. And I just love everything about her. But then
Shakespeare was really good in that too.
Yeah,
he was hilarious.
But then also, and I really wish my kids were around tonight so I could pronounce her name right. But when I saw 9 at Heart, this is what I wrote. I pulled up my review. This is what I wrote. The true standout of the evening was newcomer to Utah, Shin Jang Yu, as Guido's wife, Louisa.
Yeah, she was great.
I was blown away by her. And Annie, who I just talked about with Centerpoint, she was there in the audience. And I, after the show, her and her husband, Shelby, who directs a lot of things around here, we all just said, who is that woman? And how can we make sure that she does everything ever? Like, I want to see her play every role. Like, she was just so good. So.
Yeah. What about you, Scott?
With the exception of the Orpheus, and again, he picked it up a lot better in the second act, everyone in the Hadestown National Tour was lights out. I mean, just playing with the audience. They had them on a string. In fact, Lana Gordon, who played Persephone, had this moment during Our Lady of the Underground at the beginning of Act 2, and I wrote about this in my review as well, but she is on one foot, leaning back, like probably 80, 90 degrees, leaning back, belting, and doing this like staggering walk, and then comes back up and has this smile on her face where you're like, that was a flex. That move was such a I'm better than everyone in the planet at this particular thing, and she knew it, and she just crushed it. Amaya Braganza as Eurydice was also phenomenal. And then Tucker Smith in Singing in the Rain, and Cosmo Brown. All three of them, people that I watched that I just went, wow, I would just watch you perform all the time, no matter what you were doing.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about some already, maybe, but next up we have excellent plays, and I have to go all the way back to the same time last year, the end of the month, and talk about Pride and Prejudice at Hale Center Theater Orem. It was absolutely outstanding. I saw it 3 times because it was so good. Melissa Leone Larson's incredible adaptation. Everyone should do it. It's
Everyone was talking about it.
Good.
Yeah.
I loved that. And then I also have to give a shout out to the Regalo. They did Amadeus. It was really impressive, very bold of them to do it. And I just thought it was extremely compelling and entertaining and bold, of them to take on such a show like that. So what about you, Maren?
So a lot of times for me, theater is also about the experience, like what happens when you attend it, what happens, the conversation afterwards. And so when I'm looking at the plays that I saw and what happened afterwards and the moments for me, specifically the drive home and the conversation I had with my daughter after what the Constitution means to me is something I will really hold to for a long time. So for that alone, I really just I'm grateful for that production that Pioneer did, because it was something, my daughter is 17. She's going to be graduating from school next year. These are things that matter. So it was huge.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Scott?
I like theater that is theatrical. So last year, 2 of the things that stood out to me in this way were Parker's Pumpkin Giant and then Tuacon's Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, where you just have these 25-foot puppets that are phenomenal. And this year, I loved the Clowns Theater Company did an act of 7 Ages where they took Jacque's monologue from As You Like It and acted it out in clowning form. These, the life cycle of a person. And it was so playful and so silly and almost nonverbal. And it was just one of those things where you watch it and go, if you can get yourself into it, right? I don't know that everyone is going to be able to or going to want to engage with it. But if you can let yourself go, what am I watching here? It's an hour of this playful, very physical theater for theater's sake. They ended up taking it to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and it was just such a kick to watch. I loved it.
All right, so we're almost done. So excellent technical designs. And I gotta give, I understand that Hale has the budgets and stuff, but sometimes they really are impressive. Their Hello Dolly was really impressive. They had an entire train, like a huge life-size train. It was really good. And then A Christmas Carol at Parker, what they do with lighting and what they do with the projections and just everything is so impressive that I'd see it again. And I saw Christmas Carol a lot this season. That's how good it is. So what about you, Maren?
We're back to Murder on the Orient Express.
Oh, yeah.
The way they did the change of the train and I can't even explain it. My husband and I at intermission just looked at each other like, this is why we go to the theater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about you, Scott?
You guys hit both of them. Parker's Christmas Carol and the Murder on the Orient Express were just 2 where I just went, wow, I could have just watched a tech rehearsal of this and still been blown away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Then we just have other excellence in Utah theaters. If there's anything that was not brought up, I have to say Bright Star at Lehigh Arts was absolutely outstanding. So good. And everything I've seen, even just I went to the little holiday review there. They was outstanding. They are a really, really good arts council. Highly recommend anything there. I loved Emma at the Parker, was really good, and Something Rotten at Centerpoint. It was very fun. So I give a shout out to those. Do you have anything else, Maren, that you want to shout out?
Just this is outside of our scope as Utah theater bloggers, but because I spend a lot of time through my own children and the fact that my sister teaches high school, there are so many talented kids out there. And it sucks that the high schools don't get the budget that they deserve. And so a lot of times you go to high schools like my sister's high school, the sound system sucks. And they have a $2,000 fix that they need that they'll never get. This high school won't do it. But these kids, and I get to see so many different things. I get to see their competitions, and I get to see their rehearsals, and I get to see so much. And these kids are just so talented. I love seeing what the kids of Utah are doing.
Did you have any other, Scott, that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, I'd add to what Maren said. Utah's secondary theater programs are phenomenal. I have to tell you how much I loved Puffs. I saw it 3 times this year.
I love Puffs too. I know Rachel doesn't like it,
you
but I
you missed what makes Puffs so good.
Oh, Puffs is so good.
I know that it absolutely caters to the Harry Potter fandom, but you have to stay to the end because that's why it lands. And even as a Harry Potter fan, the first time I watched it, I was just like, okay, this is cute and tropish, but like it's also just cute and tropish. But it's what happens in the second half of the play where you go, wow, okay. This is a story.
And also, every Harry Potter test I've ever taken, I'm a Hufflepuff. So
I'm a Slytherin. The Slytherins and Hufflepuffs were really tight, you know.
Yeah.
Are all 3 of us Hufflepuffs? That's funny.
No,
Yeah.
I'm a Slytherin.
Oh, you're Slytherin. Yeah. Okay.
I am.
I am not a threat. Please be my friend. I say that all the time. I like walk around my house all the time.
I promise I will, when the next time it's done, I promise I'll try again.
We should go together. That's what we should do.
That'd be fun.
There you go.
Because then you can sit and be like, see, look at this. It'll be like, but wait.
Hold on. Hold on.
Okay, it's a deal. It's a deal. Well, very good. We did it. We talked about all of the year of theater. This was super fun for me, and hope y'all enjoyed listening. And Maren, where can people follow you?
On TikTok, I'm Doc Broadway. On social media, I'm just my name, just Maren Scriven Swenson. Yeah. And then Utah Theater Bloggers, of course.
And then what about you, Scott?
Utah Theater Bloggers and Podcast TYA. We've got some good content coming up in this next year for Podcast TYA, which focuses on theater for youth. And there's some good stuff out there. That's where you find me on X or on Instagram or whatever. So.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. And you can find my reviews, rachelsreviewstheater.com, you can find my theater reviews at rachelsreviewstheater.com or at Utah Theater Bloggers. And I also have a article that it's supposed to be today. I don't think, but I also had an article that's posted on Stage Blog ranking the holiday shows that are out there. I worked really hard on it. So check that out. I'll put a link and check out all of our Theater Tuesday episodes. I'm really proud of them, and I think they're a lot of fun. So take a look at that. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. Really appreciate that. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have the Patreon group and merch store. You can get I'm a Theater Girl shirts. So check that out. And thanks so much to both of you. And we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.